let's start with even just the title us. It's in big, bold letters. It will catch your attention if you're looking for it. And you've been working in the area of dismantling patriarchy for like over 30 years, right? This isn't new, but there's a new component to this book, which is really about taking down individualism. And as
Yeah.
a couples therapist, I imagine you're doing that all the time.
Well, one of the things I say is that leading men, women, and non-binary folk into intimacy is synonymous with leading them beyond patriarchy. I've said that for going on 40 years because patriarchy was never built for intimacy. Marriage was never about intimacy. It was about stability, property, and the birthright. Uh, you're young, you're a youngster, but back in my day, if my mom, let alone my grandmom, went to her mom and said, Harry's a good provider. He doesn't beat me or drink or cheat. But I just feel like we're really distant. We've grown apart, or we haven't had sex in 10 years, or I feel like he demeans me in public, or, well, she would have been told to go home to her guy. But nowadays, it's exactly these kind of what I call quality of relationship issues that are breaking up long term relationships and marriage. We really have raised the bar. We want to be lifelong lovers with each other. We went long walks on the beach holding hands, heart to heart talks, and great sex into our 60s and 70s and beyond. But we live in an anti relational culture. It gives lip service to relationships, but that's about it. And we don't teach our sons and daughters and gender fluid kids the basic skills of being relational or even how to think relationally. The idea of individualism is not always, this is not natural. This wasn't born in the stars. One of the chapters is the history of the idea. It comes out of the Enlightenment. It's a bunch of privileged, rich white men. And look, it's a good thing. I mean, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, but the essence of what I call the toxic culture of individualism is the idea that I stand apart from nature. That's what being an individual means. I stand apart from nature. And that fuses with patriarchy, which says, not only am I apart from nature, but I dominate it and I control it. I'm above it. And both of those ideas are crazy. They're delusions. They're insane.
Can we go back to that Harry example? Because what you described there, that maybe if your mom was in that relationship, um, it would have gone a certain way if she told her mom about it. I feel like that Harry relationship is the one that I see most frequently in my practice. It's pretty a garden variety example of either the wife coming in and saying, I love my husband. I want to be with him. I just really don't want to have sex with him. I used to want to have sex with him, but I don't anymore. And I don't know what's wrong with me. Or the husband coming in saying, I just feel like, she doesn't like me. She's always criticizing me and I'm always kind of on edge or doing something wrong. This is sort of the garden variety long-term relationship that you're talking about. So
Well,
how do you work with that?
well, first of all, let's take the broad view. Across the board in the West, women are insisting on more emotional intimacy from their men than we traditionally raise boys and men to deliver. The essence of traditional masculinity is invulnerability. The more vulnerable you are, the more manly you are. The more vulnerable you are, the more girly you are. And while this is different with younger men, there is an age factor. The younger men are more in touch. Generally speaking, the old rules are very much with us. Boys and men are not raised to be emotionally vulnerable. In fact, it feels unmanly to be vulnerable to many men. But as Brene Brown has taught us, vulnerability is what connects us human beings. And women drag men to people like you and me saying, I need them to talk to me about themselves, about their feelings, about their experience. And I need them to be compassionate when I talk about my feelings. And neither of those things is happening. And the men are going, why doesn't she want to have sex with me? Well, because she doesn't feel connected to you. That's why. And the RLT therapists, relational life therapy, it breaks all the rules. We take sides. We don't think all problems are 50-50. So we're perfectly capable of saying, Diana, you're a nut, and the guy you're with, if you're straight, you're an even bigger nut. And here's why I say that. We are not neutral. We share from our own lives. We deal not just with shame, but also with grandiosity, not just inferiority, but superiority. And we do trauma work and we teach. RLT has three phases. The first is loving confrontation. This is what you're doing to blow your foot off. This is your repeated relational stance that comes from your adaptation from childhood. For example, angry pursuit is a dysfunctional stance. You'll never get somebody closer to you by complaining about their not being close. So the first is the therapist lovingly, skillfully confronts you about what you're doing. They will absolutely defeat you. The second phase is trauma work, which nobody does in couples therapy. Janina Fisher and me, we do deep trauma work in the presence of the partner. What you learn how to be an angry pursuer. Where did you learn this? What were you adapting to? Who were you adapting? And let's do some inner child work. And we do deep and cry, cry, cry. Embrace that little boy or little girl that was you back then. And the other partner sitting there and their heart opens when they see you do this work. It's so much better than doing it off on the side with a therapist. And then the third phase is teaching, skill building. This is how you stand up for yourself and be loving in the same breath. It's new for our culture. This is how you listen non defensively and with compassion for your partner. This is how you make repair. This is what to do when you're in your a wise adult and your partner is being a jerk. Basic skills. I think it's the combination of the confrontation, which therapists are taught not to do, the deep trauma work. This is what you were adapting to back then. Let's look at that. And then the skill building and teaching. It's a combination of all three of those together that produces transformational change so quickly. And we do see that. We see transformational change in the relationship and in the individual in a pretty short amount of time.
Mhm. So that first part, confrontation, is pointing out of the pattern and what they're doing that's keeping them stuck. And you use a lot of we's and a lot of understanding of the co-regulation and the neurobiology behind what's keeping you stuck, because it's not just one side, it's both sides that are playing off of and co-regulating each other, that are participating in couples problems. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I said that the delusion of the toxic culture of individualism and patriarchy is the idea that you're above nature and can control it. You can dominate it. And that's crazy. That's insane. That's not true. Whether the nature you're trying to control is your partner, I would be happy if you would just, your kids, shut up and do what I tell you. Your body, I've got to lose 10 pounds. Your mind, I've got to be less negative. Uh, Other people, I'm superior to that race over there, or those Republicans over there, or the planet. I can throw plastic in the ocean and there's no consequences. I'm pleased that the book starts with neurobiology. We're not individuals, we co regulate each other's nervous system, goes into personal relationships, and then fades out to deal with issues like racism and misogyny and the planet. If we don't trade in a power and control model for what I call ecological humility, we're not above nature, we're in it. you fool. If we don't trade in a power control model for a collaborative, cooperative model, we're done for, whether it's our marriage or our parenting, or whether democracy goes down the drain, whether the planet goes down the drain. I mean, this is really critical at every level. So, at the personal level, when I say, is your relationship, your marriage, is your biosphere. You're in it, you breathe it, you depend upon it. You can choose to pollute your biosphere over here with a temper tantrum, but you'll breathe in that pollution in your partner's withdrawal or lack of sexuality over here. Why does my wife not want to have sex? Because you're a bully. That's why. Deal with yourself. And what people don't understand is that they're connected. They think they can get away with doing this over here with no repercussions. But you're an ecosystem. You're not separate. You're together. So that's the wisdom of us. We're a team. We're working together. And when you think this ecologically or relationally, everything changes. You know, I have a saying, you can be right or you can be married. What's more important? When you're thinking
Yeah.
relationally, the answer, who's right and who's wrong, is who cares? What matters is, how are you and I as a team going to work this in a way that's going to work for both? But you have to stay centered in what I call the wise adult part of you to remember.
That part, the wise adult versus the adaptive child is one of the most helpful teachings for me in your book, and sometimes I wish that I had, like, a video camera in my kitchen, and I could have snapshotted the fights between me and my husband over the years and see how they've changed and how they've not changed over time. And one of the things that I actually asked my husband to do in reading your book, and I asked him this when I was in a very wise adult place, very calm, late morning, I'm making pancakes. And I said, when I show up as my sort of worst version of me in our relationship, how do I show up? And he at first he was a little bit he was like, "Should I answer this? Is it safe? Is it really safe for me to tell you what I really think?" But he said to me, "Well, when" he was cautious. He said, "Well, when you show up as the worst version of you, you go really quickly through things and you speed so quickly and then you get mad at everyone for not keeping up." And the pattern I said, "Well, do you wanna know what the worst version of you is?" Because it relates to the worst version of me, because the worst version of him is when he's in his adaptive child, he, shuts down, doesn't speak, and it's, like, hard to get him to go anywhere. He's, like, 2 feet down, like a dog that you're trying to pull on a leash that's like, "I'm not going on this walk." And so here I am rushing ahead, getting mad at everyone for not keeping up, and he's, completely shut down, and there goes our fight. It's the same fight that's been in our kitchen for, 20 years now. But the difference is over these 20 years is we can usually one of us can pull out of it even though the other person's still in it. And when the one of us pulls out of it into our wise adult, then we can shift that person has the power to shift things.
How? How do you shift it once you're in your wise
Um,
adult?
Usually through, being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just feel
Yeah,
like
right.
here we are again. I love you. I don't want it to be like this for us. Like, I hate it when we do this." It's usually something like that, simple,
Yeah, I
not a
call
lot of
that
words.
remembering love.
Yeah.
You remember that the person you're speaking to is not the enemy, that there's somebody to love. And if you can't remember that, remember you have to live with the son of a gun. So it's in your interest to make things better. This is about repair. Harmony, disharmony, and repair is the rhythm of all relationships. And what you and your husband are finding out is that you can repair. And it only takes one to step back, get their head on straight, and come back in and go, let's not do this. Let's make peace with each other. And then the other one has to be willing to make peace with them.
The adaptive child part of it is important too because we know enough about each other at this point in time that I know where that part of him came from. Like, I know his history, and he knows where that part of me came from, and he knows my history. And when I can see that, like, oh, this is his history, that there's a vulnerability there that causes him to go into that place, then I soften even quicker.
Well, this is why I want to teach everybody how to do trauma work in the presence of the partner. The partner has been on the receiving end of that adaptive child repertoire of behaviors. And, it can be pretty unhappy to be on the receiving end of that. But when you do the trauma work, which we do in RLT, the question is, what were you adapting? Where did you learn this? What were you adapting to? I teach my students to always be respectful of the exquisite intelligence of the adaptive child. You did exactly what you needed to do back then to preserve your integrity and wholeness and keep yourself sane. Smart little boy, smart little girl. But I have a saying, adaptive then, maladaptive now. You're not that little girl, and he's not your dad or mom who is difficult to be with. It's a different ballgame. We all marry people who are enough like our families that we reenact the old drama. I call that the mysticism of marriage. We all marry our unfinished business, but we marry people who have other resources, unless we're very unlucky. We think we're going to be healed when we get the son of a gun to give us what our parents didn't, but that's not how it works. We're healed when once we're in the old wound with our partner, instead of going with that adaptive child with that automatic knee-jerk response, we take a breath and we get centered back into our wise adult self, prefrontal cortex, the mature part of the brain. And we go, I don't want to fight. I'm sorry. Let's not. What do you need? And then we come out of it. But the key is remembering love. To go back to neurobiology, the autonomic nervous system, far below consciousness, scans our bodies 4 times a second. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? If the answer is yes, we stay in the most mature part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. Grows until we're 26 years old. Uh, it's far and away the most complicated part of the brain. It's the part of you that can stop and think, that's present based, that can be reflective, that can take a breath, that can say, wait a minute, I don't want to throw my kid out the window. I probably want to give my time out instead. That's the wise adult part of us. Dan Siegel and other neurobiologists have pointed out, if the answer is I'm safe, you stay integrated. You have what Dan Siegel calls an integrated brain. If the answer is I'm in danger, guess what happens? Bing. The prefrontal cortex goes offline. Subcortical, more primitive parts of the brain take over. And you are seized by your knee-jerk automatic response when you're stressed. And I say fight, flight, or fix. I was very pleased Peter Levine added, along with fight, flight, freeze, they've added a fourth, fawn, from nature, from observing animals. And fawn is fix. Fawn is the animal kingdom. So fight, screw me, screw you. Flight, you can be 6 inches away from somebody and still be fleeing. That's called stonewalling. And fix is like an anxious code of, it's not a mature, let me see what I can do to make things better. It's an anxious, if you're unhappy, I'm unhappy, I'll twist myself in the knots. What do you need? So, Diana, I'm a fighter. What are you?
I'm a fighter.
Oh,
Yeah, I
really?
go towards. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Angry pursuer. And your husband's
Yeah.
a distancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. See, once I get your stances, and then I get the dynamic. The more you angrily pursue, the more I'm going to say angrily withdraws. If I got that right, is it an angry withdrawal?
he's not super angry. He's actually a pretty measured guy. I think he just withdraws and, patiently withdraws.
Okay, cool withdrawal.
Yeah, cool withdraw. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the more you hotly pursue, the more you coolly
Yeah.
withdraw,
Yeah.
and the more. Yeah, we teach our students to say the more, the more, the
Yeah.
more, the more. The more you pursue, the more he withdraws, the more he withdraws, the more you pursue. Very stereotypical heterosexual relationship. And what I teach my students is if you can formulate the more by the end of your first session, you. Les Haven's a great psychiatrist here in Boston used to say, by and large, the goal of a first session is a second session. And if you can, by the end of your first session, articulate the more with the couple and communicate that you can get them out of it, they're yours. You've got it. And I mean, I don't mean to whatever, but I can't refer. We have a network of RLT therapists around the world. They're always full. Do this work and your practice blows up because you move so quickly. Anyway, the more, the more. So the more you pursue, the more he distances, and the more he distances. So that's my patient as a couples therapist, is that pattern. To the degree to which I'm getting either or both of you to change your stance, something's happening in the therapy. Otherwise, you're having a lot of insight, but who cares? Or a lot of catharsis, but who cares? Are you more intimate with each other? That's my report card.
Mhm. So you start with identifying in those early sessions, or if somebody's doing this at home, like just this identifying the pattern between the two of you, the co-regulation and pattern. And I think that sometimes it can even be more complicated. I think I'm a pursuer to a point, and then I start to withdraw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because then I'll get him to start pursue I've kind of figured this out, like, I'll pursue, and then I'm like, "I'm not getting anywhere with this, so I'm just gonna stonewall." And then eventually that'll so we have these complex patterns, but being an observer of that, a witness of it, and stepping out of it as opposed to being in it, and that is very much a wise adult self that can observe.
My pal, the German mystic Thomas Hübel, has a saying, to observe is to have choice.
Yeah.
Because the observing you is the prefrontal cortex. That's not just the hallmark of the adaptive child part of you is that it's automatic. Boom. This is what has to happen. And taking a breath or 10, I'm a big fan of breaks, taking a walk around the block, bringing that little boy or girl up on your lap and having a chat with them. That's my favorite. Remembering love, remembering that somebody wrote, wait, why am I talking? Uh, if you're talking because you care and you want to make things better, you're centered. Good, go talk. If you're talking to just screw them into the ground or ventilate, or I have 5 losing strategies. This is all in the book. Being right. We're going to resolve this issue when we prove which one of us is right or wrong. Good luck with that. Controlling your partner. I'll be happy if you just I'll be happy if you just apologize. Unbridled self-expression, ventilating, which therapy has really been a major contributor. Let me tell you just how miserable I am. No, you don't have the unholy right to core dump on your partner. Therapy's wrong about that. I say you can express yourself or you can work toward a solution, but you can't do both at the same time. What's more important? Retaliation, I'm going to hurt you the way you hurt me, and withdrawal like your husband. I'm out of here. If that's your agenda, you got to be dead honest with yourself. And in fact, people listening, take a pen and jot these down, and I do what we call a losing strategy profile. What is your adaptive child about? Being right, controlling your partner, ventilating, retaliating, or withdrawing. And what I want you to understand is that the part of you that wants to do some combination of those 5 won't ever solve anything between you and your husband because that part of you doesn't want to. You have to call it relational mindfulness. The revolution of the book and my work is that you can cultivate the skill, you can build the muscle when you're triggered, when you're in your adaptation, you take a breath and you go, in this moment right now, I'm going to do it differently. True story. So my beat, as you know, are couples on the brink of divorce that no one else has been able to help. That's what I do. So I had a couple on the brink of divorce. Why? The guy is a pervasive and chronic liar. Lies about everything, large and small. Which says to me, if you ask him what kind of shoes he has on, he'll tell you they're not shoes, they're sneakers. He won't.
Yes, I think I've had this client.
Yeah. And he's the kind of guy, for you and the therapist listening, I'm sure you say to him, hey, the sky is blue. And he goes, well, actually, it's aquamarine. But
Yeah.
he's not going to give it to you, right? So between the wife's description and the way he handles himself in the room, in 5 minutes, I have his dysfunctional relational stance. This guy is a black belt in evasion. So loving confrontation, inner child trauma work, and then skill building. Those are the three phases. Once I get it that he's an evader, that's his adaptive child. Then I ask a question, which, unless you're thinking relationally, sounds like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. But if you're thinking relationally, it's like, it's obvious. Who is he evading? Show me the thumbprint, I'll tell you about the thumb. Show me the adaptive child, I can start to have some guesses about what they were adapting to. So I say to him, who tried to control you growing up? Sure enough, his father, military man, how he ate, how he sat, what he wore, what friends he had, what courses he took. I said to him, how did you deal with this controlling father? He looks at me and he smiles. That's important. That smile is the force of resistance. He looks at me and he smiles and he goes, I lied. Brilliant boy, smart boy. You did exactly what you needed to do to preserve your integrity with that domineering man. But guess what? You're not that little boy anymore. And she's not your father, she's your wife. So that's it. That's all we do. And he does a little connecting with that little boy, that overly controlled little boy. Come in a couple weeks later, hand in hand, true story. We're done. We're cured. Okay, there's a tale. Tell me the tale. Over the weekend, she sent him to a grocery store to get 12 things. And true to form, he comes home with 11. His wife says to him, where's the pumpernickel? And this is the part. He says, every muscle and nerve in my body was screaming to say they were out of it. And I thought of you, Terry. I took a breath. I found my courage. I looked my wife in the eye and I said, I forgot the pumpernickel. And she, true story, burst into tears. And she said, I've been waiting for this moment for 25 years.
Yeah.
That's one of the stories I opened the book with. That's a moment of coming out of the adaptive child automatic response and choosing to do something more relational. That's healing.
Yeah. And she was part of that too. Because how often does somebody make a tiny move and then they get punished? They don't get rewarded, they don't get encouraged. I mean, she came in she saw that as, "Oh my gosh, you being honest in that moment is what I've wanted for so long," and reinforced the heck out of him for it. So then now he's like, "Oh, I kinda could do that again because I came into these safe, loving arms when I did
Yeah,
it."
yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a creating a corrective emotional experience, not between client and therapist, but between client and the person they live with. That's what we're about. But you're right. I call this transmission reception work. That was very astute observation. And one of the things I say is when partner B starts giving partner A what partner A has been asking for, does partner A generally swoon in their arms and say, thank you, dear? No. They move into 8 million variations of disqualification. You didn't do it right. It's too late. You're only doing it because Terry told you to. You're doing it now, but it won't last. And my favorite, you're only doing it because I asked you to. Like, that's a real winner for everybody. So once partner B starts to transmit progress, the gauntlet goes to partner A, and all of her issues of intimacy come to the fore. And they're behind the wall, and they disqualify and reassert the old equilibrium. I normalize that whenever I see it. Everybody does that, I would say. But, sweetheart, I got bad news for you. I understand why you don't want to be vulnerable. I understand why you don't want, you are cloaking yourself in skepticism to protect yourself. And look, you've hoped and been dashed and hoped and been dashed dozens of times. You don't want to go through the washing cycle again. You don't want to get burned again. So you don't want to hope again. Having said that, you can protect yourself or you can work on your marriage. But I'm afraid you can't do both at the same time. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's the confrontation part. Coming back again to that confrontation, um, trauma work, and then skills. I can't say enough about skills. If you didn't learn how to validate someone because you weren't validated, and then your partner just expects you to validate them, it's not going to fly. I will ask a client sometimes to get out their phone and take a note. And I want you to write this down. I want you to write down, it's understandable that you feel the way that you're feeling. It makes sense. And I'm here with you. And then I want you to like use those words in a sentence this week. Just that simple. But oftentimes we don't have the languaging around how to show up in this curious, compassionate, loving way. So what are some of the go-to skills that you teach around that?
Well, you just said one of them. And one of the things I really like is you're like an RLT therapist. You roll up your sleeves and you get granular. You don't say, well, you should have a different attitude. Say it this way. That's coaching. That's what I call micro coaching. It goes like this on that third phase of skill building. First of all, there are people who don't believe that you need to teach people skill. Some of the trauma people around these days believe that once you remove the trauma, people will just know how to be intimate. Good luck with that. So we teach specific skills, how to stand up for yourself and be cherishing of your partner at the same time. Nobody knows how to do that. The difference between saying, Diana, don't talk to me like that, which is fair enough, and saying, Diana, I want to hear what you have to say. Could you dial it down so I can hear it? Which of those two would you rather hear? Which of those two works better? In terms of your sexist couples, it's the difference between, I need more sex, and saying, honey, we deserve a healthy sex life. What do we need to do to kickstart this thing? We're a team. It's remembering that we're a team. And everything changes. The energy changes, the language changes. This is where a skilled therapist can really help. Well, a lot of it has to do with repair, harmony, disharmony, and repair. A lot of the skills are about coming back. And when your partner is in a state of disrepair, here's a skill. It's a one-way street. When your partner is in a state of disrepair, you have one interest, which is helping them move back into repair with you. Why? This is not a dialogue. This is not a conversation. This is not a, you share what's bothering you about me and then I'll share what's bothering me about you. No, everybody gets that wrong. It's a one-way street. What can I say or do to help you feel better? And what was implicit in the way you described coaching these people is you replace our usual orientation, which is accuracy, objective reality, which, as you know from listening to me, objective reality has no place in personal relationship. We don't care who's right, who's wrong, what's accurate. We don't care. What matters is how we're going to make this work. If I'm listening to you complain about me or the relationship, My usual go-to is that's right, that's not right, that's right, that's half right. Yeah, well, that's sort of right. I'm rebutting. I'm not listening. I'm measuring everything you say against accuracy. That's what we all do. The second reference point is ourselves. I can't believe I have to listen to this again. Oh my God, how long is this going to go on? And when I name that, I'm naming it for everybody listening to this podcast. And what I want you to replace it with is grab a pencil, those of you listening, compassionate curiosity about your partner's subjective experience. Compassionate curiosity about what they're going through. It's not about whether it's justified. Who cares? Tell me more about what that means to you. And then here's the golden repair question. Is there anything I could say or do right now that would help you feel better?
Right now. Yeah, not back then. Right now, that's key. Yeah.
It's really
Mhm,
key. I can't
mhm.
do anything about the past.
Yeah,
And in terms of the future, let me reassure you a little work on it.
yeah, yeah.
But you don't know that till I do it. But right now, is there something I could do to help you feel better? So these are skills. How to make repair, how to speak up for yourself with love, how to receive when your partner starts doing it right. I teach people in general to celebrate the glass 15% full. It was only 5% full last week. What do we need to get it to be 20? So when your partner starts giving you what you want, be encouraging, not discouraging. But these are all skills that no one knows. You didn't see it in your family. You don't see it in individualistic patriarchal culture. You have to learn how to do
Right. And how to communicate it to your partner in terms of what you need or what works for you. That line, that it's understandable that you feel this way, it makes sense given your circumstances. That is a line that I have spoon-fed to my husband and told him, "Text this back to me if I'm losing it." And actually last night I came back from I was at a dinner party with a bunch of women, and I didn't know a lot of the women. And we were playing this card game called Cards Against Humanity. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Okay, so my first time playing, you only want to play this card game if you drink or if you know people really well. And I was in a position of neither, right? So it was really uncomfortable for me. And what came up for me was a feeling of being like 16 again and not fitting in and feeling really awkward. And so I came home and my kids weren't in bed. I was pissed that like my kids aren't in bed. I was supposed to come back from the party with everyone in bed and running around doing all my stuff. And back to my kitchen, I wish I had a video camera because I would play it of how skillful my husband was. And this is from years of us working through this. Here we are in the kitchen. I'm a mess. And he says to me, "Of course you feel that way. Of course. It was a hard thing to go into, to feel awkward." And he knows that about me because he knew me when I was 19 and I was in college. And he knew me in graduate school and he knows how I am, that these kinds of social things are tough for me sometimes. And he was able to like be there because I told him over time, this is what I need when I'm in this
it. Yes.
place.
Yeah. And you know, if you had me as your call, I would have tuned it up a little. And I would have your husband even go so far as to say, and it's understandable when you come home and the kids are running around and not in bed the way I promised, that you're pissed at me and disappointed about that too. You can even include yourself and be accountable. But the thing is that I want to emphasize is you trained him. There are three phases of getting more of what you want in a relationship. The first I call daring to rock the boat. This is when you grab your partner by the collar and you say, listen, uh, this is really important to me. Pay attention. So you did that. Listen, if I'm flying around in ways you don't like, here's what you could say that would bring me down. Pay attention. It's important. The second phase is once your partner is gets it, once they hear it, okay, I'll try. Drop the aggression and roll up your sleeves and help them out. Okay, if you were going to listen to me and respond empathically, which is what it would take to calm me down, This is what that would sound like. Let me give you the sentence. And I completely applaud you that you were that specific. Show the son of a gun what you want.
Mhm.
We know this with sex, right? We know you
Right.
can teach, but it's the same thing with our emotions. Or this is the response that would really help. And then the third phase, which I call making it worth their while. Let me be encouraging, not discouraging. Good job. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's how you get more of what you want. The way we normally in our culture try and get what we want is we're passive. We don't get their attention or instruct them about what we want. We expect them just to know. We wait for them to fail and then we complain about it. I want people in general and women in particular to be more proactive up front and less resentful on the back end. Teach your partner, not from a condescending place of I'm the expert. You're not the expert on how to run relationships, but you are the expert on Diana. So this is what, with humility, this is what would work for me. As a favor to me, would you be willing to do it this way?
So, what what do you do when there's one partner that's on board for the us and wanting to do that, and the other one isn't so much on board? They kind of, they're not all in.
Well, um, you could force the issue. You could fight as steering to rock the boat. It depends on how bad it is, the asymmetry. If it's really insufferable to live with, that's a kick out for getting good couples therapy. And go to a couples therapist that will really help you, that will really support you. I can't tell you, people come see me dragging a spouse who's insufferable to live with, irresponsible or cruel, shut down, or. They've dragged this person to 4, 5, 6, so far the record's 8 therapists, and no one has taken them on because we're all taught to be nice. And we don't deal with issues of grandiosity, we deal with shame. But grandiosity screws up couples' relationships at least as much as shame does. People who are entitled, people who are selfish, people who are ungiving, people who are angry and inflict their crap on everybody else. These are real issues that come to us, and most therapists are taught to back away. In RLT, and this is where you have to be trained, we master the art of leaning in and confronting difficult people with what they're doing that's difficult, but doing it in a way that's so loving, so on their side, that they actually feel closer to us through the confrontation. We're not taught that in traditional therapy school. We're taught to handle things with kid gloves, but that's not going to deliver the goods.
Seems like from a position of you being a white male therapist, that would be different. If, especially if you're working with a white male compared to a therapist of color or a female therapist, or that confrontation element could be more challenging depending on the identity of the therapist, or the dynamics in the room. Certainly had grandiose clients where I felt myself back away, but I felt myself back away because I'm a little afraid of you. You're a male, I'm a female. I'm not feeling so safe in this space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I would teach you if you were if you
Yeah.
were a multi-therapist? I would have you look at the guy and say that. You know what? I'm a little afraid of you right now. Do you mean to be intimidating to me? Uh, I learned that working in an ER. You get these big psychotic people and they tower over you, and you look up at them and you go, I'm a little afraid of you right now. Do you mean to be intimidating me? And then they go, no, no, no. Well, could you sit down? And the paradox is if you say, I'm afraid of you right now, you're meta communicating that you're not so frozen that you're not going to put it on the table. If you're willing to take your seat, if you're willing to sit in your power, if you talk to a guy about what they're doing that is blowing their own foot off. And you give them examples. The art is what we call joining through the truth, telling you the truth in a way that makes you closer to me. And there's an art to it. If you can tell somebody that they're drowning and throw them a lifeline, they'll take it. But you have to know how to do it. I, I can't tell you how many sessions at the end of a session, I or any other trained RLT therapist sounds something like this. Bill, who's been lying and cheating and philandering for 20 years, you know, Bill, you're a decent guy. I have sat with men who are indecent to the bone. They're called sociopaths. And man, they're cold. But you're not. We talk, I feel connected, you laugh at my jokes, we nod, you take it. I feel you know what's amazing? You're a decent guy. I am talking to a decent man who has behaved indecently for the last 20 years. Will you let me help you rescue the real you from that crap that you've been involved in? Is that something you're interested in? Now, who says no to that? No one, and they don't. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of bypassing the adoptive child and forming an alliance right with the wise adult part. It's you and me looking at your bad behavior. I'm empowering that part of you. I love that part of you.
Yeah. We could do that with our partner too, right? You
Yes.
know? Yeah, set aside the bad behavior and remember I think that's often why we stay with our partners, the ones that stick through the many marriages within the marriage.
Healthy self esteem, rare in this culture, is the capacity to feel proportionally bad about bad behavior or even character traits like selfishness and still hold yourself in warm regard as a flawed person. I'm a good person who behaved badly. If I don't feel bad about the bad behavior, I'm shameless. I'm a sociopath. We don't want that. If the feeling is not about my behavior, but who I am as a person, that's shame. That does nobody any favor. Guilt or remorse is in the middle. It's about the behavior. It's not about me. It's about you. And I teach, one of the things therapists are afraid of is that their client will go from inflation to deflation. You pop the grandiosity and all of a sudden they're on the floor. And I teach somebody, if I see them go into a shame state, about the difference between shame and guilt. Shame, when you go from shamelessness into shame, you trade one form of self-preoccupation, I deserve, I'm entitled, to guess what? Another form of self-preoccupation, oh, I'm a big shit, don't come near me. Like, don't comfort me. I feel so bad about what I just did to you. It's crazy. Guilt is not about you. You get over yourself, as my kids say. Guilt is about the person you hurt. Let me make amends to you. What could I do to help you feel better? And if I see this in my office, I say, okay, Bill, it's really hard to come out of shame into guilt. I'll give you 60 seconds. Ready? Go. And they do. Now turn to your partner. What can you do to help him feel better? But this is the kind of very active coaching that we do that I think most therapists shy away from.
Yeah, which is so great, and there's a lot of I'll link to resources if you are a therapist and you want to get trained in your model, I'll put that link in the show notes. And I will say, my one of my very I'm more an individual therapist than I am a couples therapist, but my very good friend is a couples therapist, and I've told her for years that she should get paid double what I get paid because the work that you do is so challenging. I mean, your work you have to keep each individual you have, like, 3 clients. You have the each individual, and then you have the couple, and you're navigating all of that while you're navigating your own self and observing you and your patterns and how you're getting triggered as a therapist, and it is hard work. So, thank you for giving some guidance to couples therapists and doing the work that you do.
A lot less hard once you have the map. And in RLT, we teach you what to do. Do this, and
Yeah,
do it in that order. You'll be fine.
it's great. Maps are helpful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Terry. It's wonderful to meet you in person and have this conversation with you, and I hope that it benefits many, and appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Thank you very much, and stay in touch.